name is Jeff+Price, and I run a little podcast called tower+of+c. It's basically a weekly rundown of entertainment options in the downtown area, and it's something that I've been doing for about 3 months now, and that's what's dubious and qualified me to tell you guys about podcasting in general, and then how to start podcasting yourself, or maybe do it for a client. So what we'll do is we'll go over just a little bit about podcasting. We'll come at it from a perspective that you're not familiar at all with podcasting, and then we'll tackle exactly how to podcast. Now, what is podcasting? Well, it's essentially like a radio show broadcast over the internet, accessible to pretty much whoever would like to listen to it. And usually a podcast features one type of show with new episodes released on a regular basis, daily, weekly, or pretty much whenever. But a podcast is not just a downloadable audio file or video file. What makes it unique is the subscription model that uses the RSS or Atom feeds, basically an XML file that allows you to automatically download the podcast and onto your computer, and if you have a portable media player attached to that, onto your portable media player like an iPod as well. Now, podcasting has been around for about 5 years now, and pretty much since the rise of the popularity of the iPod. Now, if you break down the word itself, it's pretty much a mashup of terms iPod and broadcasting. But it's a little bit of a misnomer because in the sense that you don't need an iPod to actually listen to a podcast, just a computer and internet connection. As well, unlike radio and TV, we broadcast, of course, over the airwaves, podcasts are delivered over the internet. Even so, based on the popularity of the iPod and what have you, podcasting has still come to refer to the act of recording a show and delivering it on a regular basis in a subscription type of way over the internet. Now, I'm going to stick to the audio variety of podcasting in the presentation, and we'll cover some uses for you, for a client, and then actually how to do it yourself. So, why podcast? Well, basically there's 1,001 reasons why you can podcast. If you have an interest, you can produce a show about it. With the tower+of+c, I talk about the events going on in the downtown area, but a lot of people, if you're interested in the news, you podcast a show about a particular aspect of the news. You can podcast about your favorite sports team, any number of types of topics. But some interesting uses of podcasts have been to deliver audio tours of museums, or deliver public safety messages on a regular basis, or maybe even highlight a particular company's products or services. So you might even be interested in producing a show about a conference meeting update, like that. So in terms of public safety messages, the JSO does not do that, so we're sort of on our own in terms of keeping safe in the podcast world. But that being said, let's talk about how to podcast. The first step is deciding what you want to talk about. And after that, start writing. Now, it might not necessarily be a word-for-word script, because a lot of people can't take a script and read it and make it actually sound natural. But definitely think about what you'd like to talk about, jot down a few notes, and feed off those notes so you can let your creative brilliance shine. Now, the second step is deciding sort of the general format for your podcast as well. And I put together just a general outline of a regular podcast, a format that's adopted by a lot of podcasters, and you can do this one in 8 simple minutes. I put together a little intro as well to demonstrate a couple of the elements that you definitely want to include in your introduction, your name, the name of the show, the purpose of the show, maybe a theme song as well, and a way to contact you. So with that, we can take a listen. Most podcasts have really trashy intro themes, and that's my version
We're not stopping now, we just got started. I'm Jeff+Price, and today we're talking podcasting at the July meeting of Refresh Jacksonville. If you've got a comment for us, just send it over to Travis at engineworks.com. Now on the news.
So you can see it had the intro theme, the introduction, the name of the show, the purpose, and then jump into some contact information, and then you're ready to rock. Now, the next, you might want to start with a preview of that particular episode, covering what you're going to be talking about. From there, dive into the meat of the podcast, go over the top story, the main topic, and really cover that in depth. From there, of course, you can go into some secondary stories or topics, and finally, your closing. And with the closing, you probably want to reintroduce that theme song and also repeat what the name of the podcast is, your purpose, and then some contact information. Some podcasts have ways to incorporate feedback as well from listeners, whether you have people leave a voicemail message and then transfer it to your computer, and whether it just be you read emails or what have you. So there's a lot of different ways that you can actually incorporate the format into your podcast, but there are no rules. It's just right, just like the Outback. So have fun with it, but just make sure that people are aware of what they're listening to. Now, after you have a general idea of what you'd like to talk about, it's probably a good time to gather the equipment to actually record the podcast. So first off, all you need is some audio recording hardware, whether it's a desktop, laptop, and a mic. Maybe it's a PDA, or maybe it's an iPod with a voice recorder. But before you record, just make sure you test your equipment and have a backup in case it doesn't work. That happened to me on occasion a few times because I used a PC. It was only this past weekend when I got the Mac, and so if you're working on a PC, it tends to fail almost inopportune times. So definitely have a backup if you do that. Next up, you need some software to edit the actual audio. And for the tower+of+c, I've actually used a program called Audacity. It's a free audio editing program that's available on the PC as well as the Mac. Though it does have some issues in terms of being loaded on the latest version of the operating system on the Mac. But regardless, it has a whole suite of options to enhance your audio, and it's a good thing to check out. Of course, if you're on the Mac, you're using GarageBand, and that's really powerful suite of software as well, so no problem there.
Yeah, if you use GarageBand, you can actually talk right into the mic if you have a PowerBook.
And I'm glad you brought that up. I'm actually going to be doing that in a little demonstration in a little bit. This is a good point. And then lastly, you want to gather your elements as well. Your intro and theme song, your sound effects, and your guests. And that might be the most difficult part, is gathering those folks. But if you want to make sure that you're recording in a relatively quiet place, something without distracting sound. Here, it would be kind of tough to record because of the sound of the AC unit. But for the tower+of+c, I just recorded in my apartment in a little nook, and it's away from the air conditioning vent, it's away from the washer and dryer, so even though it's sort of a hack job, it's a pretty quiet, good place to record. Of course, make sure all the cell phones are turned off, your guests are ready, and they're mic'd up. Speaking of which, really, your mic technique is what can make or break your podcast. Certainly, you're used to listening to radio, you're used to listening to, if you listen to a lot of podcasts, the best ones have a consistent level of sound. And let's talk a little bit about how you can get there. Before you even hit the record button, what you want to do is eat an apple, and not your computer, the fruit. And what that does is it actually cleans out the mouth, so your mouth, so you don't sound smacky. And in the voiceover industry, that means sounding like this. And since I had a little bit of the rum and coke, I'm a little smacky right now, but that's okay. Didn't break the apple. But definitely do that, or pear, if you're not an apple fan. What that does, once again, cleans out the mouth and makes it sound really nice. Secondly, when you're actually recording, keep your head steady, keep your face about 3 to 5 inches away from the microphone. What that will do, once again, is produce that consistent level of sound. You also probably want to take a look at your audio levels as you actually record, and once again, make sure that they're pretty consistent. Don't move your head side to side while you're recording, and don't lean away from the mic in the midst of speaking, because what that will do is make it sound like you're actually leaving the room. So that good mic technique is really important, just as a basic production standpoint, to keep that podcast going.